6. And it feels like maybe that is the direction we're going if, there's going to be more poaching going on. But, that whole talk today, that Dennis Dodd article, we were talking about those very schools and the whole scuttlebutt about that 2-3 weeks ago. So it makes you wonder, like, who on the Pac-12 side potentially is putting that out there, who on the Big Ten side could be putting that out there, who, anywhere else could be putting that out there to try and ramp up some pressure as well, And you got to wonder anytime anything involving the Big Ten comes out too is, okay, is this somebody trying to, as best they can, attempt to strong-arm Notre Dame and hasten some type of a decision of some sort? But again,
they aren't listening.
Notre Dame's on their own, and until they're not, they are, and they are on really no timetable that anybody can speak to.
They're on their own timetable.
Yeah. So this whole waiting on them is, okay, how long are you waiting for that? And until that gets cleared up, it feels like you can't really clear up too many of the other parts of it because there's a domino effect. If you can't add Notre Dame, if you're the Big Ten and that's your ultimate goal, well, then how many do you want to add after that? Like, if you add Notre Dame, then you're probably going to add at least one more, if not 3 more, which would make sense with those Pac-12 schools. But then, how do you set yourself up for 10 years from now with the ACC? And whether that falls apart early or whether that lasts as long as it does. And, because all these moves being made right now, guys, these weren't, drawn on a whiteboard like a year ago. These have been in the making for quite a while, even if the commissioners are relatively new. The ideas have been marinating for a while.
Well, look, if you're the Big Ten, the SEC, I think, seems to be content being in the region that they are, and kind of just widening out. They don't, because they are so powerful, they don't feel the need to go coast to coast. They just want to add brands that make sense for them, which is what Oklahoma and Texas mean. So that's why if they expanded, that's why, the Clemson and Florida State things would make sense for them getting in that 20 because it's still in that same region. It's still very much who they are about big brands in that part of the, this part of the country, south of the Mason-Dixon line. But I do wonder, though, with the Big Ten, and they're like, okay, we're going to add these 4 teams so that USC and UCLA have kind of a travel partners and we have kind of east and west parts of the conference. But if they're really trying to go corner to corner of the country, the one place they don't have is anywhere in the South.
Yes.
And anywhere in the Southeast. Yeah. So to me, the Big Ten expansion would make sense going into the South. Now, if they want to continue to have their, strict rules on AAU members, well, that makes a lot of the people out.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know how I'm curious of just how concrete of a rule that is.
Well, when
there's some exceptions, I feel like,
Well, Nebraska was, and then they lost it because their medical school was in Omaha, not connected to Lincoln, and probably because they weren't much of an AAU school anyway.
No, I know there's definitely a connection there, and I know that Kevin Warren just spoke about academics yesterday, but if there's somebody who's super borderline but would be valuable to the conference that isn't AAU, I think they'd still let them in. That's what I'm curious about. Do you have to have that?
So here are their schools that are AAU members in the ACC: Duke, Virginia, Georgia Tech.
There's one,
and I believe North Carolina.
There's they would definitely want North Carolina. Anybody probably would.
Let me see. North Carolina is not.
Okay,
I don't think they are. Yeah.
So if North Carolina want to join the Big Ten, you think they're going to tell them no?
Probably not. No, yes, they are. Yes, they are. I'm sorry. Okay. My correction. Their logo is not as recognizable, but yeah.
But that's my question is, if let's say North Carolina wasn't, or Clemson wasn't, or Florida State wasn't, are they going to tell them no? That's what I mean. Is is there an exception that can be made, or is it you have to be an AAU school? I think there's an exception that can probably be made for the Big Ten if they are thinking business. But yeah, at some point you think they would have to look south and east. Here's the deal: what does the SEC ultimately do? How do they counteract anything? Neither one has to really do much more than they've done already. They could just stop where they are, and they would be super exclusive, which what I was speaking to earlier is the more teams you add, the less exclusive it feels and becomes. And then it's basically just college football A and B rather than super elite League One and super elite League Two. They're kind of elite right now. They'd still have all the elite schools, but the more you add, the more, it does kind of water the thing down. And then you're 24 teams, and you're not a conference, you're a league at that point. So, this Kevin Warren, he left that door open, and that what leads to speculation. The Pac-12 fires keep burning. As far as the war with the Big 12 online, there's a lot of mud being slung back and forth there, but I still feel like until Notre Dame makes a decision or the Big Ten or somebody outright says, hey, this is the next move, which none of them appear to be in a hurry to do, that you're kind of just waiting if you're everybody else.
I do think it's funny, like this Big 12, Pac-12 Twitter war that's going on. It's kind of funny to me in that, look, the people in Big 12 country are just like the reasonable ones like us are just saying that right now I'd rather be the Big 12 and know what I am and what I'm going to be as opposed to the Pac-12 that's in a desperation spiral right now.
They are where the Big 12 was in late July of last year.
But they can never go back to being who they really were because they've lost Los Angeles. So they have to reinvent that in some way if they want to stay at conference. But it's also like, look, the Pac-12, looked down on the piddly little Big 12 last year. A lot
of
schools
do.
And looked down when it happened, and then it turned around and happened to them. So it is that turnabout is fair play kind of an attitude where really no one wants the conferences. Most fans don't want the conferences to break up. Want everything to stay relatively the same, but that's not an option now. So you have these, who's better, but ultimately,
when did that who's better start? I never remember that growing up. The Big 8 was great, or the Big 10 was great, or the SEC was great. It started when the media got to the point where covering college football was as big as anything but the NFL, and there was this pride. And the SEC has their pride. But now it's almost to the point where it's gotten to the point
it's propaganda.
Of academics or AAU. It's like it's pick your narrative of what you want.
Oh, it's like if you're a fan of a certain school, it's like you never lose because every argument eventually devolves into like, hey, we played each other head up and you lost, but oh yeah, well, what's your net worth for your university? It's like
how much revenue are you producing?
What is like the main the main sum of a university, like the endowment? Well, what's your endowment? And like now we're comparing endowment sizes. It's like comparing, what? I mean, like, come on. I mean, that's what it devolves into. And so, that's why the big schools never in theory lose. It's like, hey, we've beaten you 6 straight times. Well, yeah, we got more conference championships. Well, hey, we got the same amount of conference championships. Yeah, we got more national championships. Oh, we got the same amount of national. Oh, we got a bigger endowment.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, we got the same endowment. We got more alums that are living over 35 in the western part of the country. And it just goes on and on and on.
That just could be trolls.
And that's just tribalism too. Yeah. Like there's a lot of that's running rampant these days more than ever. But yeah, and that's also part of the fun is just throwing out the trash talk there. But, yeah, ultimately it does come back to what's going on the field, and that's where I typically keep my brain, and that's why I'm so looking forward to hearing about, a month from now when we're going to be, knee-deep into actually seeing, okay, whose transfer portal additions mattered and whose didn't. And hopefully by then we'll also have some clarity on realignment. But I thought it was very clear in listening to Matt Groves yesterday, and Kevin Warren as well, and Jim Swarbrick, and everybody that's talked at this point is like there's a couple of people who have their hands on the levers that can create this next chapter and get it moving along, but they're not doing that right now, and everything just sort of seems like it's at like a Mexican standoff. Is that the term for it? Where everybody's pointing guns at everybody? That's what it feels. It feels like a Mexican standoff, if that's the right term, yeah.
Opie, D-Don, I don't know exactly if I said that right, Opie. Sankey did say they were proud of the regionality and touted that. We've also heard that regionality doesn't matter anymore in certain ways. Let's see. The AACs or the ACC's AAU schools are North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Pitt, and Georgia Tech.
I forgot about Pitt.
Yeah,
I always forget that they're there. They won the thing last year, but still.
Who wants that Pittsburgh market? And when we start hearing that talk, eventually. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the Big Ten now goes east to west all the way. They don't have the South, however. But if you just draw kind of a line like crossways, I mean that's pretty much the Big Ten and the SEC now, at least in the future. The South and the Southeast and the Southwest, to an extent, are covered by
the Big Ten
SEC.
spans what, 3 time zones? Yeah, right.
Wouldn't they span all of them? Or do they go coast to coast?
No, they're not in the West. They're not in Pacific time, are they?
The Big Ten?
The Big 12. I'm sorry, the Big 12. The Big 12. Yeah.
The Big 12 is in the Eastern, Central, and Mountain.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking about the SEC and the Big Ten. Though.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking about if you draw a line, like across the country, like whatever that term is, from like New York down to like San Diego. Okay, slice that bad boy in half. On this side, the Southeast and the South, you got the SEC, basically.
Right.
And on the upper half, you've got the East Coast and the top part of the Midwest, the North, and all the way to the Northwest.
And that's a Big Ten, yeah.
There's your Civil War right there.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, where, does the SEC need to go any further? Do they need to go coast to coast in theory? Does the Big Ten need to go south? And so those are the questions that I have more so than anything is like, what does the end game look like? Does the Big Ten want to be coast to coast like they are now, or do they want to be coast to coast and northern border to southern border and do they want to be America basically? Same thing with the SEC. Like, how much do you want this thing to grow, and how much territory do you want to claim? Because right now both conferences have pretty large, they each got half the country.
No, you're right. It's a good point the way you put it that way as well. And I will say this to close it out. I never in my life, because I surely was never invited to go to a school that was AAU or had an endowment of a lot, because I went to Stephen F. Austin and I love it because it allowed me to get into what I do for the last 40 plus years. When did I ever hear until really recently and on social media when people start to bring up endowment and or AAU? Only because what you said, they're not AAU, and that's kind of a snobby way to look at it.
Whatever you can hold over the other person to feel superior.
When I vote for the Heisman Trophy, and I'm fortunate to be a part of that, or if I had a vote in the college football poll, I wouldn't give a damn other than who they are as a football program and who they've beaten and their schedule.
But that's why there's the same schools are the kind of the blue bloods, because eventually always just ends with the we got more All-Americans. Now we're tied. Now we got more conference championships. Now we're tied. Well, we got more national championships. Now we're tied. Well, then now you're an endowment. We got more people in Hollywood than you, or whatever somebody can try to hold over your head to distract you from the fact that the beginning of the conversation was about who won the game that Saturday.
Yeah,
it's like who won the game that Saturday. That's what matters to me. I can't wait to see who wins these upcoming Saturdays.
If you missed Phil Steele, that's going to be up, of course, thanks to Eli.